How to prevent abduction and trafficking 101. Should child abduction and kidnapping laws be amended, supported, or repealed? I believe that child abduction and kidnapping laws should be repealed. It's always or usually a violent crime. By far the most pervasive myths about human trafficking is that it always or often involves kidnapping or otherwise physically forcing someone into a situation. In reality, most human traffickers use psychological means such as tricking, defeating, manipulating, and threatening victims into providing commercial sex or exploitative labor. To me, this is something that I found very interesting, only because it is so true. Most people that I've heard stories from, this has happened to them. Most of the time, people think that children get kidnapped or they are trafficked because the parents are not paying enough attention. If you look at the ads in Walmart or the papers in Walmart or Target or whatever, you'll say, oh, like these are from a long time ago, but the parents still have not been found. Whether it's an adult or a child, only about 100 children, a fraction of 1%, are kidnapped each year in the stereotypical stranger abduction you hear about in the news. About half of these 100 children come home. What do you think happened to the other half? Do they come home? Most of the time they are not found. This is something that I've always been very passionate about. I would always stop at those signs in Walmart and be like, oh, like, really? Like, this child was maybe a year old or 2 years old, a couple months old, and they've all been either abducted or trafficked or even kidnapped. The purpose of my speech is to teach you all about child abduction and human trafficking, because this is something that is very important and we should all know the signs and how to prevent it. My 3 main points are why this policy is in place, who created this policy, how is this policy being enforced today. Most of the time you don't see a lot of people enforcing, oh, well, this kid went missing 3 years ago. Well, just so happens that the police might still be looking for this child, and it's very serious. So human trafficking became an issue way back in the 1900s, and there have been thousands, maybe even millions of cases that happen till this day. So now that we have looked at the history of abduction and trafficking, of the abduction and trafficking policy, let us turn our attention to the rules. Rule number 1, they span a wide age range from 1-year-old to 18-year-old. Sex trafficking victims up to roughly 25 years old most often start as young as 14 years old. So you can be 14. I personally have read cases where they are even younger than 14, maybe even 12. There was one case that I read that there was a 12-year-old girl who had gotten trafficked, and she wasn't found until she was like 18, and it was really sad. So, trafficking involves transporting someone into situation or of exploitation. This can include forced labor, marriage, prostitution, and organ removal. Lots of people, they are cut open and you know tortured, and it's actually really awful. So some of the things that you see in the movies is true. It does actually happen. And rule number 3, it estimated that internationally there are between 20 million and 40 million people in modern slavery today. So what we read in our history books when we were younger and what we see on the news is still happening till this day, and hopefully one day we can find a way that it'll stop. And rule number 4, human trafficking earns global profits of roughly 150 billion a year for traffickers, 999 billion of which come from commercial sexual exploitation. That just speaks for itself right there. Like, we all have to figure something out. And rule number 5, estimates suggest that about 50,000 people are trafficked into the U.S. each year, most often from Mexico and the Philippines. I personally have seen a lot of people who are of the Hispanic culture who have been trafficked. I see a lot on the news. I see a lot in the newspaper, online, in articles that I've read. They are usually young, so they are usually from the age of 15 above. And yeah. So now that we have looked at the rules to the abduction and trafficking policy, let's turn our attention to the problems. The reason this needs to change is because it happens all over the world. According to National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, they have nearly 800,000 children reported each year, which means that there is about 2,000 that are reported a day. And there's 203,000 children are kidnapped each year by family members or strangers out on the street. Problem number 2 is you are taking these children from probably the only family that they have ever known. Most children, if they are taken as of a young age, they grow up and they remember their trafficker or their abductor as their family. And so when they are found, they don't know who to believe as their true family. Um, which I know if that was my case and I was missing, I would be really sad um, to, know that as my only family and not remember the people that gave the person who gave birth to me or, anyone else in my family. That would be really sad. So we can prevent a child from being killed. There's 75% of abducted children who are murdered um, are dead within 3 hours of the abduction. Um, there was a case by Elizabeth Smart, um, and she actually has written a lot of articles, and she wrote a book about how she helps and how she does a lot of fundraising for children who are abducted and who are kidnapped. So now that we have looked at the problems to the abduction and trafficking policy, let's turn our attention to some of the solutions that we can be part of to maybe change the way that these situations are handled. So the first solution that we can do is we can do fundraisers. We can make our voices heard, and that would put an end to some of the horrible things that are being done, and maybe even put, kidnappers or traffickers where they belong, which, in my opinion, is jail. Solution number 2, you can volunteer. You can go to a local women's center and help the millions of people who are not only there by themselves, but they might be there with their children, and probably help give them some hope that one day they won't have to keep on running and they'll just be able to stay safe where they're at, in their home. And the third thing is, let's be aware of the signs of human trafficking and abduction. For me personally, I would write a paper. You could do a research paper and you can help those around you and your classmates and even some of your family members become more aware of what they can do to help stop child abduction and kidnapping go any further than what it already has. Now that we have looked at the solutions to abduction and trafficking policy, let's turn our attention to the practicalities of the policy. If you have learned the indicators, so if you know the indicators, you can see, and if you probably see it happen, you can help it stop sooner. So if you see someone on the street being trafficked, or if you see someone on the street being abducted, you'll know what to do to help stop that person from going any further. If you feel that you or a loved one are in serious trouble, you can call a hotline, and they will they'll help you get through it, and they'll help you get some of the help that you need. They'll help you, find a safe place to go. Um, yeah, I've personally seen on the internet and videos and stuff like that that help hotlines actually really do help when it comes down to dangerous situations like abduction and trafficking. You can put up posters in the community, make it known that it's a real issue, not only in America, but in so many other countries like Costa Rica and like South Africa today. I know a friend who lives out in Costa Rica, and she says she can't even leave her house without, someone else with her, preferably a male, because if she goes out all by herself, then it is a very good possibility that she will be either trafficked or abducted. And hearing those stories from her just broke my heart. And so, yes, post things in the community and make it known that it's a real issue here in not only America, not only the United States, but in so many other countries today. The action I would take is to raise as much money as I can for the shelters that are helping these people who are abducted and who come and find themselves in a situation where they can't go back to their home because their abductor is living there now. And you can provide them with food if that's the only way that you can do it. They're always looking for canned goods. They're always, wanting to have you guys bring in things that will help them um, do as much as they can and provide as much as they can for the people who are now there living in their space. Abduction and trafficking is something that everyone should take seriously. It can happen to anyone, me, you, sitting here. It is a very, very serious issue. And so if you see or hear of anything, whether that's on the news or whether that's, in your neighborhood, try and do something to stop it, because it's very, very serious. This has taught me so much more about abduction and trafficking than what I had already known. I thought that it was just, I know it's around, but I thought it was just something that happened in certain countries, and it doesn't. It happens all around us today. And so we all have to be very careful. It's not only just, certain cultures. No, it happens to everyone. And this is my works cited. Thank you.